Imagine stepping onto your morning train and feeling as though you've accidentally boarded a theme park ride. The carriage glides across rivers on giant bridges, snakes around cliffs at dizzying heights, dives into the belly of a mountain, and then, just when you think the journey can't get stranger, bursts straight through the middle of a high-rise apartment building. This is not some futuristic sci-fi dream. This is the daily reality of millions of people in the Chinese megacity of Chongqing, home to the most extreme metro system on Earth. A city that shouldn't exist. At first glance, Chongqing feels like a place that defies logic. Most large cities are built on wide, flat land where roads, buildings, and railways can sprawl without much trouble. Chongqing is the complete opposite. Its urban sprawl clings precariously to steep hillsides and winds through deep valleys cut by rivers and ridges. The landscape is so dramatic that visitors have compared it to stepping into the dream-bending world of Inception or playing a life-sized game of snakes and ladders. Locals call it the 8D city because navigating its streets feels like shifting between multiple dimensions at once. Despite its unusual geography, Chongqing is home to over 32 million people. To put that in perspective, if you took the population of New York City and multiplied it by 4, you'd still be short of Chongqing's staggering scale. The terrain makes the population density even more remarkable. The lowest parts of the city lie around 150 meters above sea level, while the highest points soar up to 400 meters. That's a 250-meter difference. The height of a skyscraper. In some parts of Chongqing, you can stand at ground level and look up at another plaza that is also ground level but 100 meters higher. It is an urban labyrinth built into the bones of mountains. Why Chongqing needed a metro. As the population ballooned, the city's road network simply couldn't keep up. Commuters packed buses, cars crawled bumper to bumper, and cable cars swayed across the rivers trying to relieve the pressure. At rush hour, a single roadway could be swarmed by tens of thousands of commuters. Experts ranked Chongqing's traffic among the very worst in China. The solution seemed obvious. The city needed a metro system, but in a city like this, building one was more of an impossible dream than a practical plan. How do you dig tunnels when mountains slice through the city center? How do you build bridges strong enough to cross massive valleys, yet light enough to stay stable in an earthquake-prone region? For decades, engineers and officials studied the idea, but each proposal collapsed under the weight of technical challenges and astronomical costs. Then, in the late 1980s, something changed. A dedicated task force was assembled to finally tackle the problem once and for all. They studied rail systems around the world, examining metros and other cities with unusual terrain, and after years of research, they came to a bold conclusion. Chongqing didn't need a conventional subway. Chongqing needed something different altogether: the monorail solution. What they discovered was that a traditional subway system like the one in Beijing or London would be a nightmare to build in Chongqing. Conventional rails are heavy, wide, and demand enormous amounts of concrete and steel supports. The city's geography would drive costs sky high. The task force calculated that a conventional underground system could cost as much as $200 million per kilometer. A monorail, however, was lighter, cheaper, and far more flexible. By straddling a single elevated track, monorail trains could climb steep gradients and weave through tight turns that would defeat a regular subway. They required far fewer supports, and the construction price tag was almost cut in half, closer to $100 million per kilometer. Even better, monorail stations consumed far less power, sometimes up to 10 times less than conventional subway stations. For a city perched across a roller coaster of mountains and valleys, a monorail wasn't just a clever option, it was the only option that made sense. Building the impossible. Choosing the monorail was only the first step. Building it was another ordeal. Normally, elevated railways are assembled with giant cranes that lift heavy beams into place. But in Chongqing, narrow roads, sharp slopes, and precarious cliffs made cranes nearly impossible to maneuver. Engineers had to invent something entirely new, a specialized beam-laying machine. This mechanical beast carried each segment of track beneath its belly, crawled slowly across the support columns, and carefully lowered the beam into place. It was engineering innovation born of necessity. At last, construction began in December 2000. After 5 years of relentless work, the city finally celebrated a milestone many thought would never come. In 2005, Chongqing opened its very first metro line. It wasn't just a triumph of transportation, it was a declaration that this city, as impossible as it looked on a map, could and would modernize on its own terms. The train that goes through a building. Line 2. Chongqing's first monorail is the line that made global headlines for one jaw-dropping reason. It passes directly through a residential skyscraper. When the line was being planned, the land where tracks needed to run was already owned by a developer preparing to build apartments. Rather than forcing a costly relocation or scrapping the plan, the Metro Authority and developer decided to collaborate. The result was a building designed with vertical shafts through its core, wide enough for the train to pass on its own supports without ever touching the structure. The effect is surreal. Commuters glide straight through the 8th and 9th floors of a bustling apartment block, while residents live and work above and below. Surprisingly, life inside the building is relatively peaceful. The noise level is around 60 decibels, about as loud as a dishwasher. For most tenants, the novelty of a train running through their home has long since faded into the background hum of city life, breaking records above and below. Chongqing's metro has set records from the start. Hualongqiao is the world's highest metro station at nearly 50 meters above ground, while Hongyankun is the deepest, more than 100 meters below. The system also boasts record-breaking bridges. Gongyan, the longest suspension bridge for metro use; Kaijia, the highest, soaring above the Jialing River; and Kaohsianmen, the world's longest through-arch bridge. More than transport, the network is a catalog of engineering firsts. Expanding the network. Once the first line opened, expansion was unstoppable. A few years later, another monorail set a world record as the longest line, and today carries over 250 million passengers annually. But planners soon realized monorails alone weren't enough. To serve such a vast city, Chongqing combined elevated lines with deep tunnels, adopting conventional rail where monorails were impractical. The result is a unique hybrid metro system, part roller coaster, part subway, and tailored to its geography. By 2025, it runs 12 lines with 3 more under construction, and by 2035, the network is expected to nearly double to 23, each addition reshaping millions of lives. Engineering triumphs and human determination. Some of these later projects tested workers to their limits. Building Hongyankun Station, the world's deepest, took 3 years of painstaking excavation. Construction workers spent nearly 40 minutes each day climbing down into the site and back out again. The scale of effort behind every station, every bridge, and every tunnel in Chongqing is almost impossible to grasp without seeing it firsthand. Yet what emerges from this relentless labor is more than just infrastructure. It is a declaration of human determination to overcome nature itself. Where other cities would have surrendered to geography, Chongqing has embraced it, weaving a transit system that defies logic and physics but somehow works every single day. A city and its metro. For the people of Chongqing, the metro is not just a way to get to work. It is a lifeline that connects neighborhoods perched on opposite hillsides, bridges colossal rivers, and shortens journeys that would once have taken hours. It is also a symbol of resilience. The city refused to let its mountainous terrain define it as inaccessible. Instead, it turned that challenge into a showcase of human ingenuity. Unlike in many cities, where metros are hidden beneath the streets, Chongqing's is impossible to ignore. It slices through skylines, clings to cliffs, dives deep into mountains, and runs right through the heart of people's homes. It has become as much a part of Chongqing's identity as the rivers that carve through it and the fog that blankets its valleys. And that's the story of Chongqing's mind-bending metro. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the world's most extreme mega builds, don't forget to hit that like and make sure you subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.